And I think one of the most important things they check in a fit interview is that you have that culture fit or not. I think that is very important, because you need to have a certain mindset to work in a particular company, and that comes out in these questions. They will pose behavioral questions there, put you in awkward situations, maybe also give you a kind of a stress interview round then and there, and which you might not have been expecting.
So, hey everyone, welcome back to the 101 session with a thought leader on SECO. And today, once again, we have with us a new thought leader. His name is Suraj Chakraborty. Since Suraj is right here beside me, so Suraj, before I dive more into your introduction, since you're here, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi everyone. Thank you, Siddharth, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. So, I actually am a strategy consultant working for IBM right now. I have a BTech in chemical engineering and a MBA from SPGen as an academic in my academic profile. And I have a total of 6 years of work ex. I have worked across. I started my career actually as a technology consultant. Worked there for almost 2.5 years, and then I also worked for a manufacturing company as a oil and gas professional. So I have a mixed experience actually, both in the tech industry as well as in the core industry. And then MBA gave me a platform so that I could consolidate the two, and then come up with a come up join a role wherein I can use both the expertise, and that is where I am doing right now in IBM.
Awesome, great. So again, Suraj, I'm really glad to hear that you are here with us for the 101 session. And so let's start with it. But before we dive into the main discussion, we have a rapid fire ready for you. So this is a surprise round. It hardly is a five questions, and it's as the rapid fire obviously round rules that I simply ask you a question, whatever comes to your mind, the very first thing after getting a question, answer it to me in 2 to 5 seconds. So you ready?
Sure, sure. Yeah, I'm ready.
Oh, okay, cool. So the first one, Suraj, that I have is asked to write a book that will be published nationally addressing the youth. What would you write to them about?
Addressing the youth, is it? Yeah. So I think the first thing that comes to my mind when it is about informing the youth, or empowering the youth about, is about education, and how education is important for a country's growth. And I think that everyone should be encouraged to uh, proceed in the education career, and to learn new things, and to pick up education as one of the key important things. And I think to how do you empower young children in India, particularly the poor, below poverty ones, whom you see that who are not going to school, and how do you empower them to get educated, get into academics. So and do your bit to do that. Maybe kind of like a story, a novel to inspire them. So that is what I would do.
Nice. So it seems to me that you're well prepared for actually to write a book.
Actually, I thought about I wrote a few stories, and
Oh,
this is,
nice.
yeah, those are published online, but those are just short stories. But this is something. This is a very topic which is very close to my heart, and I have been thinking about writing about it. So yes,
Nice. So in that case, since we ourselves believe in that notion that you have on
yes.
education, so probably we'd be the first one to get ourselves subscribe to that thing. So great. So moving on to the second one, Suraj, is what career advice would you have given to your younger self if you would have met him right now?
Okay. I think one key career advice which I would give is to sometimes live for yourself. I think what the mistakes we do most of the time. I think immediately after our 11 and 12 exams, is that sometimes we are very confused as in what we want to do. I particularly I really didn't know, and sometimes we just go by what others are doing and what we are forced to do, and I think that is not what I would want my younger self to do. Actually, my career might have taken a very different route if I had followed what I wanted to do. I wanted actually to get into physics. I really had a lot of interest in this the quantum physics and this research sector. I think, however, somehow this innate need to for myself to be in this research area has led me to IBM, because IBM has this research facility, and kind of a lot of work we do here is needs a lot of research to be done. So I sometimes I look back and feel that maybe, hey, I could have simply taken the research route and not this long route of engineering and MBA. Yeah.
Got
So
it.
yeah,
So
that is the advice.
that in itself is a pretty powerful advice altogether, that we, and I completely buy that one thing that, you at times fail to live for yourself, but,
Yes.
to take a little bit time. It's not going to harm you any which way. So I
Yes.
agree. Okay. So the third one, Suraj, is asked to interview a famous personality in a corporate world. Who would you choose and why?
Okay. In the corporate world, I think it would be the ex chairman and founder of Wipro, which is Mr. Azim Premji. I've been part of Wipro for almost 2.5 years, and I had been following him even from day one. From induction till being part of Wipro, it always gave off tried to be give bring in that international standard. That is one, and second, particularly Mr. Premji, despite being such a big, a big businessman. I think he's one of the best philanthropists we know. I think the best one in India. The way he motivates people to give donations, and I think that is a culture which he imbibed in Wipro as well. And there was one incident actually. He came to visit the Kolkata campus, and it was actually a surprise visit. The next day, this then CEO was supposed to visit, but he came in for a surprise visit, and we were not, we didn't know. And we had this dress code in Wipro, but I was not actually following that, and I was actually in the canteen and just walking by. Suddenly, he just walked by me, and it was this kind smile and that grandfatherly look. I think that there is a lot to learn from him. So I would definitely like to interview given the chance.
That's beautiful. Great. So the fourth one now, Suraj, is we are nearing to the end. So what was the toughest interview that you remember cracking in your career so far?
Okay, I think this would be during my B school. It was for one of the big four accounting firms, and I remember that the interview went on for almost an hour. It's a typical consulting interview, and there were I think all aspects possible in a consulting interview were being asked there. You call a fit interview, you call guesstimates, you call case interviews. Everything was asked there, and I was happy to hear that actually I had cracked it. But however, that my interests lied somewhere else. I think I wanted to be part of this industry 4.0 sector, but that was for actually mergers and acquisitions. So I gave that one up, and I decided to pursue this instead.
Got it. All right. So the last one, Suraj, is the next big thing planned in your career ahead.
Okay, this is tricky, but uh, I think for now, I really don't have that straight out planned out. Although I do envision myself to be maybe starting something of my own. For the time being, I'm honing my some business skills with. I try to manage my wife's business. She has her own small business, so it's kind of a startup, and I help manage that. And I sort of honing some skills there. So maybe, yeah, starting something of my own. That's always the dream of any B school pass out. I believe.
Agreed. So great, awesome. So we're done with the rapid fire, Suraj. So you
Thank
did great. Your answers were fun, and obviously they at times were becoming a little inspirational. So now I would love to hear a little bit more, with respect to how your journey has been. So, Suraj, the very first question in itself, your journey in itself, like you said, has been a pretty, good road wherein you have ventured into different things. So, right, and before we actually dive into the main discussion, so all these questions which we are going to talk. So, on Chico we have this typical format of getting things answered in a quick and easy way, which is like 3 to 4 minutes. So, if you can frame the answers in the same pattern, it will actually help us place it well on the
Okay,
platform. So
sure.
now moving on to the main, let's start with it. So would love to hear your journey so far as to, and obviously what have been your biggest learnings through, your different domains and specifically the one that you're in, the consulting domain.
So coming to my journey, let me be frank. I started with Wipro because it was a campus hiring. I mean, you join a engineering college and then you just look for a placement, and Wipro came in and I joined. However, I was lucky to join the consulting practice of Wipro. I was working there as an ERP consultant, and I was also working in the functional domain. I was not at all doing any programming work, which many people fear. I know that after passing out in engineering college, doing, you think that you have done a core engineering study for almost 4 years, but then you're joining an IT firm, and that fear is always there that you end up doing some programming work which you never wanted to do. But luckily, that was not the case for me. I joined in as a functional consultant. I was working, actually, basically uh, consulting for my clients' problems in their sales and distribution function specifically. However, while I was there, I realized that to understand and solve a client's problem better, you need to be on the other side. You need to work in that domain first. And I saw that I have a engineering background in chemical engineering. So why don't I leverage that to gain some domain expertise, some core industry expertise? This is the time when I got an opportunity to move to Oman. There was an engineering company there. It's called Technicus Reunidas. So they design oil and gas plants, particularly the upstream process. And we had clients there from all over the world, from South Africa, from even the Middle East, and so that was a great experience working there, designing actually oil and gas plants, how it is done, and then actually I got to do get into some meetings with actual stakeholders who actually operate these plants, even the key financial stakeholders. How do they drive their budget decisions and everything? So all this knowledge I gathered over there. However, around this time, something unexpected happened. When I had joined, and this is an unexpectedness, which is this uncertainty exists in this oil and gas field. This is sort of governed by your crude oil prices. And back then, it was, I think, when I joined, it was in 2014. Crude oil prices were around 20, around. It was ranging around $120 a barrel, but in 2016 it crashed down to $27, just at $27 a barrel. And this was because of a lot of supply and demand issues with US introducing shale gas and everything.
Correct.
And I realized that there are a lot of factors in this area which are not in your hands. You really cannot control. There are so many macroeconomic factors which can jeopardize your career. And I realized that I've already gathered sufficient knowledge which I can use in actual consulting practices, actual consulting engagement. So I got an opportunity back in Wipro to join back as a lead consultant. This time I was driving a larger module, particularly the supply chain module in Wipro, and I did a couple of projects here. Now 2 years gone in Wipro again, and I realized that now I have a hybrid experience: 2 years in industry, 2 years in technology. So let me, why not try to try to combine the two and get a role wherein I can use this. And I realized that MBA gives that kind of a platform, which pushes you to that catapults you to that kind of a role. And I got into SPJ in Mumbai, which is one of the top business schools, and I really did not want to let go of that opportunity. Meanwhile, I got did a small stint in IBM as well before my MBA. So I was working as an advisory consultant there. Then after this MBA, when IBM came in with this role as a strategy consultant, so finally I realized that I could use both my manufacturing and oil and gas experience and my technology experience, and I learned a lot of gathered a lot of knowledge around artificial intelligence and IoT and cloud during my MBA. So with that, I joined IBM in the strategy practice.
So, so this actually brings me to the most recent role that you are into right now, and we would love to hear a little bit about it because majority of the people still aim to be, where you are. So, basis on that role. So, what does a typical day-to-day role of a strategy consultant looks like in IBM?
So, in strategy consulting, see, there can be two kinds of strategy consulting, and accordingly, your role will vary. So, one is either you are doing corporate strategy or you're doing client strategy. So, corporate strategy, when you're doing it, that means you need to understand your own company's offerings and products and services well. You design their go-to-market strategy, and that would involve building a lot of offering material so that the sales team can go ahead and sell those materials out in the market, and then you work with your design team to come up with new offerings, and then you build partnerships with other companies. So in IBM, we have partnerships with, say, with Microsoft. We have partnership with Boston Dynamics, wherein we jointly come up with new offerings for the market, so that we can cross sell and upsell to our own clients, and as well approach their tap into their market as well. So that is your corporate strategy. But when it comes to client strategy, it will sort of depend on different problem statements. I think accordingly, the kind of strategy engagement we drive will vary. So maybe the client wants to improve the entire data landscape, because currently the way they gather data is not transparent. It's not visible. They don't have the control over the data. So that means you have to drive a data strategy for a client. That means you want to guide the client that, hey, you want to achieve this kind of transparency, this level of this control of data, then you need to do this. So for that, whatever needs to be done, we need to propose that. Same, it can be a digital strategy, it can be simple business strategy. Now, however, no matter the kind of strategy engagements or client strategy engagements we drive, there is a basic simple process that is there in any consulting process. That is, you do a basic requirements gathering, do a basic as is study, that is where the client currently stands, and then what the client wants to achieve. So this involves a lot of workshops, a lot of interviews with clients, and then properly documenting the problem, and then building the processes which they have, and then accordingly you devise a solution, which the best fit solution for the client. And then once the solution is ready, you proceed with the deployment. So this,
Got
I
it.
think, to answer your question, yeah. So it varies based on the kind of strategy you're driving.
Perfect. So you actually gave a lot of dynamics altogether in the answer. So thank you so much for that, Suraj. So moving on to the very starting point. So I could probably lay down this question in such a manner that, with respect to interview process. So how does a typical interview process looks like for a strategy consultant in top tech companies? What does it really look like?
So in a strategy company, in a strategy consulting role, particularly, it can involve your classic the fit interview, because they want to check that whether you have that kind of expertise, that kind of knowledge at least with you or not. And sometimes that becomes your basic and your easiest form of interview. However, sometimes it's maybe you don't bring that kind of experience, or maybe the company wants to dig deeper, that that whether do you have the capability or not. They want to assess you better. So in that sense, what they do is they can conduct include elements of guesstimate, or even a particular case they might give you to solve then and there, to check that whether you have that capability or not. So it can start off as a generic fit interview, but then it can branch off into this kind of case interviews and guesstimates.
Got it. So, you just spoke of a fit interview, and honestly speaking, we haven't really heard a lot about this. Although, yes, in consulting, I've heard a lot about case interviews primarily because, we hear a lot of consultants have been here too. They always say practice, practice case interviews, how to
Yeah.
crack into case interviews and all that. But if you can help us with a basic layman term as to what is the difference between a fit interview and a case interview.
So, as a fit interview suggests, the word fit, that means they're just checking your fitment. And I trust me, I got this a lot that, okay, you're not fit for this role. Maybe I was not, but actually, that helps two ways, because I think it helps both the company and you as well. So I think in the fit interview, your basic question, it can start off with your basic questions, such as to tell you about yourself. So which is basically gathering, creating the environment or understanding the person better, and then they can they can dig deeper into your particular experience, which they might have, I think they pick some definite interest in. Maybe they are actually driving a project in that area, they had faced similar problems in the past, and that might pique their interest and they want to go deeper there. Or maybe they are facing this kind of problems, but they do not really have that skill set, but you are bringing it, and they want to explore that further with you. So all these things can come out with a case interview, with a fit interview. And I think one of the most important things they check in a fit interview is that you have that culture fit or not. I think that is very important, because you need to have a certain mindset to work in a particular company, and that comes out in these questions. They will pose behavioral questions there, put you in awkward situations, maybe also give you a kind of a stress interview round then and there, which you might not have been expecting. So these things happen in a fit interview, basically checking your fitment. Now, in a case interview, it can start off as a role play between you and the interviewer, wherein the interviewer acts as simulates the role of a client, and you will be playing the role of a consultant, basically the role you are expected to play in actual real world. And some companies may keep it generic, as in your typical case studies which you actually practice, in which is available everywhere. Many examples are available, but some companies focus on maybe some problems which they had faced in the past, and they want to check if this candidate can actually solve that problem. I had an interview with one consulting firm. They took this approach with me, wherein they presented a problem that they faced with a client, and they wanted to check that what my solution would be. Turns out that whatever I suggested actually was which was done, and luckily that helped me crack that interview. But that is not what will always happen. Sometimes they will pose a very generic question, as in, say, sales are dropping from a kirana store. So what might be the reason? So this kind of situational questions might also, cases might also present. Another approach they might take with a case interview is a guesstimate. And in a guesstimate, what happens is they will ask you to basically guess an estimation. So they will present a very unique problem that, can you guess the number of voters in this election season? So you need to guess then and there that what might be the count. So that actually engages your think. They try to assess how you're thinking a particular problem.
Got it.
So
So you actually, Suraj, to be very honest, answered the other question that I had with respect to the case interview. But again, just a little bit of if you can share just in simple words. So the other question was primarily about, we hear this a lot about case interviews, and primarily if we know that students nowadays who are wanting to become, they're wanting to become consultants in their careers ahead. This is one thing that they have to go by.
right.
Go through case studies, go through case interviews, prepare like this, and like you rightly said, there are majority of samples nowadays that are available and one can go through. But at the end of the day, if you can just help us as to what exactly the interviewer is trying to find with respect to skills through a case interview in a candidate.
So I think what the interviewer is trying to assess is, one, is your listening ability when they're presenting the problem. Are you listening to the client properly or not? So they can have two candidates, one who is jumping directly to the solutioning, another candidate who takes time to take down some notes and to assess the problem. So the former might actually think that he's presenting a more confident role, but he's not. The other one is actually showcasing that he is taking time to understand the problem, which is what is expected. Second is your approach. That how do you approach a problem? And sometimes the primary mistake which everyone makes is jumping to the solution, because they think that that is the apparent solution, which should be the case. So you think you are given with a problem that, hey, sales are down, so what might be the problem? And you might think that, okay, maybe there is a competition, so you should improve the product. But there might be other latent issues there which you need to figure out. And for that, that approach is very much important, which they want to see, that you are not rushing the problem, you're seeing all factors and then going into it. Thirdly is basically the solution, yes, and you cannot really give a solution which is not feasible to the client. Say the client is facing that problem because they had made a huge investment recently, and you are asking them to make another investment. So client will basically really throw out your solution there and there. But you need to come up with an intelligent solution that how they can reuse their existing investment better. So your solution is also very important. That how you're thinking about client. Are you putting the client first there or not? So yeah, these three factors are primarily what they're trying to assess in this kind of interviews.
So primarily, in nutshell, it's all about problem solving, right? From the very beginning to
Yes.
listening to all the way to resolving the problem. I think you
Yes.
pinpointed it in a very right 3 pointer way. Great. So, Suraj, this brings us to the next talking point, wherein what's your guide on how to develop an effective framework to structure the problem. So while obviously we know that the problems are placed in front of us, but as per you, what's the right and most effective framework to structure and then go about it?
Okay. So to structure a problem, I think what is very important, that you need to first break it down to different layers, that you're understanding it correctly or not. And secondly, you need to do a lot of research around the topic, because you may not be the expert in that particular area. So I think sometimes we make the mistake and directly start solving then and there, but that is not correct. And lastly, I think you need to understand that what the client basically wants. And because very recently, I got this problem statement, and it was very client was very direct about their ask. But when we dug deep, we realized that their basic need is someone else. So I think that is very important, that you don't directly read the client problems as is. You need to understand the latent need behind it. So yes, I think you need to break it down, and the granularity is important. And then I think you will understand that what is the root cause of the problem.
Got it. So this is again a little interrelated to my next question, and again you
Definitely.
sort of touched based to the next answer to altogether. But the other talking point is as to what are the most important aspects to present in the conclusion to the analysis that one has done.
I think what is important is you need to showcase that you've understood the problem. That is one. Second is the final solution, the conclusion would be there, but how you have done your analysis, that approach should be there. How you have gathered your data, and how what are the hypotheses you have come up with. So these are certain keywords which would be there in a consulting engagement, because when you're solving a problem, there can be numerous possibilities which can be actually causing the problem. But you would have come to say you have drilled down to certain, say, four or five hypotheses based on certain assumptions. So you need to mention these assumptions as well, that what are these assumptions which you have taken, and how you're negating these assumptions to actually come to the final conclusion, your final analysis.
Got it. Great. So this brings us to the next question. Now, this is a little bit towards moving. So we have talked a lot about how to solve problems, consulting, what goes around, what's inside.
Yes.
You've helped us with a little bit of an insight and everything. So we actually went through your profile, honestly, Suraj, and we saw that you are a TOGAF certificated person, right? So if you
Right.
can help us in simple terms as to for the audience as to what is TOGAF certification all about?
Okay, so TOGAF is okay. It firstly stands for the Open Roof Architecture Framework. It's for budding enterprise architects. And what is enterprise architecture? Architecture is basically how you devise an IT strategy so that it aligns with your business strategy. So what happens most of the time is these two don't go together, and business strategy is sometimes top down. It comes in from the higher stakeholders. They have decided a approach and they go ahead and do it. And bottoms up, sometimes this ID strategy is driven. They say that okay, this is not working, let's fix it with this particular tool. This is not that is not correct, so let's go ahead and implement that technology. And sometimes what happens is they don't meet at the right point. So TOGAF helps in devising, it gives you a framework so that you can drive these two together. So I think then TOGAF certification helps validate that you understand this properly. And it's not only for architects, because see, I'm not working in the capacity of an enterprise architect, but I follow these principles that you need to understand your client's baseline architecture first, that what exists in the client architecture, and then you come to a target architecture, that okay, what the client wants, and accordingly you drive everything. That okay, maybe if this is their business strategy, and if this is what they want to be, and this is where they're currently at, then what should be their data landscape, what should be the technology landscape, and accordingly then you move together, and finally you drive a change management process. Because what happens most of the times is you go ahead and implement something but it is not adopted, then what is the point of the investment? So change management helps in doing that, and that is also something which is covered in TOGAF. So I think that in that aspect TOGAF really helps, this certification really helps validate that.
Got it. So now that we know, that you mentioned about what exactly is TOGAF. So, just two related questions to the same thing as to
Yeah.
how does a TOGAF certification empower one in the current corporate world, which is outside, and on the other hand, how and who should actually go for TOGAF as per you? What would you say?
So this the TOGAF certification, I think, like I said, it has validated that. But I think while you're preparing for the exam as well, you will be going through these frameworks, this approach. They have this particular this architectural mindset, they call it, wherein you take this approach when any client problem you solve. And I think it can be it's not a easy exam. I think anyone with some degree of technology expertise only they might be able to approach it. But others, yes, definitely, if you're in a consulting engagement, I would definitely encourage to do it. And there are two levels to the exam. There is level 1 and level 2. So level 1 being a foundation exam, and the level 2 actually presents you with such case-based questions, which you can which wherein you need to answer the best, give the best approach there. So level 2 essentially tests that whether you can apply TOGAF principles or not. So that is I think so this is how you can approach with TOGAF. Yeah.
Got it. Perfect. So thanks so much for actually giving the insight out about TOGAF, Suraj. So we are almost coming to the end of the 101 session. So the third last question that I have is something that you already touched base in the very beginning when we were, hearing about your journey so far. This is with respect to Industry 4.0.
Right.
So, so first of all, in again layman terms, as to what is Industry 4.0 and what are the actual benefits of the same?
Okay, so Industry 4.0 is nothing but the fourth industrial revolution. So you have heard of the first industrial revolution, the Renaissance period. Now there had been new innovations which actually brought in new stages in industry, and that pushed the industry leaps and bounds ahead. And I think the last industrial revolution before this was back in when internet was just introduced. So that brought in, wherein most industries, this new e-commerce and digital industry was formed at that time. And also robotics was used to some extent back then, and automation was introduced. Now, right now, Industry 4.0 is all about how do you use the digital technology, the new age technologies such as artificial intelligence, IoT, blockchain, analytics, cloud. How do you use this to bring in that extra layer in your industry, in your company, and bring about transformation in your process, so that you can achieve that next level of targets. And why is it important and how is it helpful is that, one, others are already doing it. So if I'm talking to a client, um, I know that their competitors have already done it and they are moving forward. And nowadays, gone are the days where you can rely on just a monolithic software. Monolithic means, just a pretty. Just imagine that you used to work on PC, rugged PC based. Desktop. Not long back, maybe we used to use button based phones, and not and soon now we are doing a virtual webinar right now, this kind of a virtual interview session, and how fast the world is moving. And if we are not on top of it, others will beat you to it. So this notion that machines will get our jobs is not that. It's just that we don't want to be obsolete. We have to get on with the pace, and that is why Industry 4.0 is so important.
Great. So obviously, change is inevitable, and I think if you relate this statement to the corporate world, we have seen you rightly mentioned there are so many corporates in that we even as case studies we have seen so many corporates who have died down because they never adapted to a change, right?
Right, right.
They and I think that's a very valid point that you just made. So now that we know about what Industry 4.0 is, so as per you, how can one actually gain expertise in this specific thing? How can one expand the knowledge with respect to Industry 4.0?
Right. So one thing in Industry 4.0 is important is that, the term industry, that means you need to develop an industry expertise. That is one angle to it. And the second is you need to have an expertise on one of at least one or two of the digital technologies which is there. And so if you are focusing, if you're targeting to be an industry expert, then be the expert there, be the SME there. However, you need to develop knowledge in the technology aspect as well. You need to understand what AI is. You need to understand what IoT does, and how cloud is used. Because nowadays, the traditional infrastructure is no longer there. Clients are running, everything is running on cloud. Everybody is implementing AI, and IoT is being deployed everywhere. So that is what you can do as an industry expert. Now, as a technology expert, you need to develop deep expertise as in any one of the key digital technologies, such as the ones which I just mentioned. But you cannot stay away from industry. You need to understand that how these are being deployed. So that convergence needs to happen. That is how you can become a true Industry 4.2 professional.
Got it. So this ultimately, that first of all, thank you so much, Suresh. We are now at the very end question. We have almost covered like all the different aspects that you have hold and expertise on. And now moving on to the very last burning question to any person who's actually watching and wanting to become a strategy consultant as their aim,
Right.
right? So your advice for young aspirants on how to, probably shape their career to go for a strategy consultant role, what would your advice be?
I think one is definitely you need to have that kind of hands-on experience in the industry. However, the route which I took is very difficult, maybe that to actually combine. I mean, it was a chance happening, maybe, but nonetheless, I've seen people doing it. You get into an industry, you work in the industry, develop an industry knowledge, and then you come to technology and you understand, develop some expertise in some of these areas, and read a lot about it. There are so many materials available online, and even I think I would recommend people to go through key analyst reports. They have been posting real cases and how the market is moving, new trends which is coming up. You cannot stay obsolete. You cannot know that what is you cannot not know what is blockchain, you and what is IoT and everything. So this kind of basic knowledge you need to have. You need to develop that interest as well. And coming to consulting, so any young professional when they enter the they're just entering the workplace, I think the main problem is that change of mindset from academic to professional mindset. We stay in that mindset that we will have a sir who will be telling us what to do and not to do, and then accordingly we will do that. But in workplace, yes, we will have a team lead, we will have a project manager, but at one point you need to take the ownership, you need to take the leadership in everything. and
Correct.
uh, and I think you need to bring in something called the consulting mindset, which I'm really thankful to Wipro for imbibing that in me. You need to come out from a service mindset to a consulting mindset. So service mindset is wherein a client comes in and says that, hey, this is my requirement, and you will say that, yeah, sure, I'll get it done. Yeah, yeah, here is a program. Here is the final the software which you wanted. But consulting is about, okay, why does the client want, why does he want this? And let me try to figure out if it can be done in a better way. Maybe client can derive better value in a particular way. So this kind of mindset, this kind of thinking you need to have from day one. And once you start doing it, you will start exploring avenues maybe which you did not do before.
Correct. So this ultimately brings us to the end of the 101 session. I'm like exhausted the list of questions that I had for you, Surya. So once again, thank you so much for obviously coming on board for the 101 session. I thoroughly enjoyed how, despite of the facts that, we were covering all different, pointers on different things, the best part was your answers were concise and obviously they were very insightful within themselves. And I'm sure that whosoever is watching the video is definitely going to benefit a lot out of these.
Thank you. It was fun to be here. Particularly, I loved the rapid fire round. I was not expecting that. But yeah, thank you. It was great to be here. And yep.
Great.
And yes, anyone willing to connect with me, you can do connect with me over LinkedIn. I'm open for mentorship as well. I do get requests for admission guidance and also career guidance. So that is fine. Do reach out. I will be happy to help.
Great. So, guys, here's an open invite from Suraj. So he's there on LinkedIn. Please go right ahead, pack him over LinkedIn, connect with him. Obviously, he can mentor you further with whatever queries you have. So, great, Suraj. Thank you once again, and hope to. And for the guys who are watching, please stay tuned because we are coming back again with one more thought leader on Zico with the Zico 101 session. So, thank you once again.
Thank you.